Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for joining us here in this morning. We are from the group 3. Our group consists of 3 people. The first one is Talitha, the second is Putri, and then the last is Nur Laila. I'm here today to talk to you about variation of translation technique and strategy. We are divided our presentation into second part. The first is about the technique of translation, and then the second one is strategy of translation. Okay, so as I mentioned it, the first thing I'm going to talk about is a technique in translation. Technique is several ways to translate a sentence or word at the smallest thing in the reading text. Based on G.P. Vinay and G. Darbonet in 1958, there are 7 techniques in translation. First one is borrowing. Borrowing is a translation technique involving the same word or expression in the original text into the target text. For example, the first one is pure borrowing. The example, Azal, Sim first arrived in Malaya for England as a young mem sahib. And for the TL, Sim tiba di Malaya dari Inggris sebagai seorang mem sahib muda. Mem sahib in the SL and mem sahib in the TL is the same word. And then the next example is naturalized borrowing. By restricting the lines to 8 syllables, and then the TL become dengan mengatasi baris tersebut menjadi 8 syllables in SL, getting a change a little bit, but the pronounce is still same in the TL. At least they use the same word, but it's got a little modification in here, but it still look like. Is calco. Calco is a special kind of borrowing where a language borrows a word or an expression from another language and translates literal each of its elements. So, example, Azal, all poems overpower her persona with a death-like swan. In the TL, the word a death-like swan is translated literally. So, a death-like swan, rasa tidak sadar, layaknya kematian. A death tidak sadar, layaknya swan kematian. And the next example is Amanda gets job promotion as a Secretariat General. Secretariat General in TL becomes Sekretaris Jenderal. So they translate each word. And then the next is literal translations. A literal translation is to translate a word-for-word translation, achieving a text in the target language as correct as it is idiomatic. It is acceptable only if the translated text retains the same syntax, meaning, and style as the original text. So, example, both Lewis and Sim state an objective. Baik Lewis dan Sim menyatakan sebuah tujuan. Every word forward is translation, and they have a same syntax and structure. And the next is I will love you. Saya akan mencintaimu. In here, the structure is still same, even is changed to be TL. That's why it's called literal translation.
Okay, the next technique will be presented by me, Talitha Salsabila. Transposition. Catford defined transposition as a procedure of translation which involves the changing the grammatical structure from SL to TL. Transposition involved moving from one grammatical category to another without altering the meanings of the text. Examples. In SL, if you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you cannot see, the TL will be jika kamu hilang dalam kegelapan dan tidak bisa melihat. These examples was translated by using transposition translation technique, which replaced the grammatical structure in target language to source language. The position of dark in search language is an adjective, while kegelapan is a noun. The replacement can be adjective into noun or to the contrary. Another example, in isel, a pair of glasses. In TL will be sepasang kacamata. This change from plural nouns in English to singular noun in Indonesia. The next is modulation. According to Vinay and Darbonet in Hatim and Munday, modulation is a variation of the form of the message obtained by a change in the point of view. In other words, modulation means restructuring a message of source language text and a target language text in different structure, but the meaning is not different. For example, in search language, I will say the word to find you. In target language will be akan kuarungi lautan untuk menemukanmu. This technique replaces the reader's perspective. The search language sail as an active sentence is translated into kuarungi, a passive sentence which can change the reader viewpoint. Another examples of modulation, in search language, it also assesses whether the operation is profitable and whether costs are adequately covered. In target language will be di sini juga dinilai apakah operasi menguntungkan dan apakah biaya cukup tertutup. The word assess is a transitive verb. It means that it needs an object. Moreover, the existence of inflectional bond morpheme s at the end of the word proves that the word is appropriately occurring in the sentence pattern, in particular active sentence pattern. It is different from the sentence pattern in target language. The word formation dinilai indicates that the object of the sentence is the main focus.
Compensation. Based on compensation is a technique that introduces search language element of information in another place in the target language because it cannot be reflected in the same place as in the search language. For example, I was so moved that I couldn't stop crying. Aku sangat terharu dengan tangisan itu. A pair of scissors, sebuah gunting. Translator change the element information and give stylistic effect in target language because search language cannot be reflected in the same place in target language. Adaptation. Adaptation, also called culture substitution or culture equivalent, is a culture element which replaces the original text with one that is better suited to the culture of this target language. This achieves a more familiar and comprehensive text. For example, I had to give daily bread to my wife. Saya harus memberi rezeki sehari-hari kepada istriku. Her skin color tone as white as snow. Warna kulit dia putih kapas. The translation of daily bread cannot be rendered as roti harian, but rather rezeki sehari-hari. The translation of as white as snow cannot be rendered as putih salju if used in a culture place there's no snow, but rather putih kapas.
The second subtopic is strategy. Strategy is something that need to develop a method in translation. As Mona Becker stated at 1992, she lists 8 strategies which have been used by professional translators to cope with the problematic issues while doing a translation task. One is translation by a more general word. Based on Mona Baker, this strategy used to deal with many types of no equivalence. As Baker believes, the hierarchical structure of semantic field is not language-specific, so it's works equally well in most. Example, in the SL, you barbarian and the TL is dasar bandit. The word barbarian is translated to bandit. The word barbarians means orang biadab, and also the word barbarian have a number of different meaning. In this situation, translator use strategy to translate SL into the accurate meaning. This strategy apply for readability of the target readers. The word barbarian then translates into bandit to sound more general for Indonesian reader. Another example, SL teach him expose his ignorance, and TL aku mengolok-ngoloknya mengejek ketidaktahuannya. In this example, there is a non-equivalence in the type of proportional meaning. The word expose has meaning membuka, but it does not match with the context, so the translator changed into mengejek. Next is translation by a more natural or less expressive word. This is another strategy in the semantic field of structure, which is the translator use natural word to translate the word or phrase rather than translate literally. So example, don't panic ladies, I have the situation under control. Tenang nyonya, semua terkendali. The phrase don't panic is translated into the word tenang. The translator use more natural word to translate the phrase. Instead of using jangan panik, they use tenang. So the word tenang in the TL word is more suitable rather than literally meaning, because the word tenang deliver the equivalent effect to the reader and context of the situation. The other example, we go out in the yard and feed up to 500 feet of string through a mixture of a ground glass and glue. Kami keluar ke halaman dan melapisi benang sepanjang 150 meter dengan campuran bubuk kaca dan lem. The word ground in the source language that actually has meaning tanah, replaced by the translator, becomes bubuk. In this strategy, it has to do with differences in expressive meaning.
The next strategy is translation by cultural substitution. Based on Mona Baker, translation by cultural substitution strategy involves replacing a culture-specific item or expression with a target language item, considering its impact on the target reader. This strategy makes the translated text more natural, more understandable, and more familiar to the target reader. For example, in the source language, warung-warung makan. In the target language will be food stalls. As a head of the expression, the word warung-warung is closely equivalent to stalls in English. The translator could understand the meaning of word makan in Indonesian as a noun, not as a verb. The strategy is very accurately used for transferring the term into English. The next example, in short language, tomorrow will be Halloween party. The target language will be besok akan diadakan pesta topeng. The word Halloween party is held every 31 October by Europe citizens. Most of them who celebrate use masks and certain custom. The Indonesian translation replace it with pesta topeng to give the reader the concept with which he can identify something familiar and appealing. The next is translation using a loan word. Based on Mona Baker, this strategy is usually used in dealing with culture-specific items, modern concepts, and buzzwords. Using the loan word with an explanation is very useful when a word is repeated several times in the text. At the first time, the word is mentioned by the explanation, and in the next times, the word can be used by its own. For example, in search language, compose the salad like you were painting a picture. In the target language, susun saladnya seperti kalian sedang melukis gambar. In this strategy, the cultural terms are not translated, or the translation still uses the source language term. Another example, in search language, Mariam walked along noisy, crowded Cypress Line boulevards. The TL will be Mariam berjalan di tengah keributan dan sesaknya boulevard yang diapit pohon cypress. Boulevard is a wide street or thoroughfare. The translator adopts boulevard into boulevard. She might consider that the word is difficult to be translated, so that it does not sound natural in target language, since it is not common word used in Indonesia. The next is translation by paraphrase using related word. Based on Mona Baker, this strategy is used when the search item in lexical. The next is translation by paraphrase using related word. Based on Mona Baker, this strategy is used when the search item is lexicalized in the target language, but in a different form, and when the frequency with which a certain form is used in the search text is obviously higher than it would be natural in the target language. For example, in search language, after you put his head in the dark, press to squeeze the fat out. The target language will be setelah kau masukkan dia ke mesin peras bebek untuk keluarkan. Another example, in Isal, he really loved it. In the target language will be ia girang bukan main. In this strategy, the term is paraphrased in the target language in the different form.
Translation by paraphrase using unrelated word. The paraphrase strategy can be used when the concept in the search item is not lexicalized in the target language. When the meaning of the search item is complex in the target language, the paraphrase strategy may be used instead of using related words. It may be based on modifying a superordinate or simply on making clear the meaning of the search item. For example, how many longer do we have to play this charade? Sampai kapan aku kelihatan bodoh seperti ini? In this strategy, the translator used the word bodoh to represent the word charade. This strategy is applied for the sake of the readability in the target readers. The word charade is then translated into bodoh to adjust the context and make the target language text more readable and understandable for the reader. Another example, you can even dine al fresco in the summer on our open-air terrace. Di musim panas, Anda juga dapat duduk dan makan di teras tempat terbuka. In this strategy, the translator used word tempat terbuka to represent the word al fresco. This strategy is applied for the sake of readability in the target readers. The word al fresco is then translated into tempat terbuka to adjust the context and make the target language text more readable and understandable for the reader. Translation by omission. This may be a drastic kind of strategy, but In fact, it may be even useful to omit translating a word of expression in some contexts, if the meaning conveyed by a particular item or expression is not necessary to mention in the understanding of the translation. For example, can we finally get going? The word finally describes after an unspecific period of time and especially long delay. The word finally has a number of meanings. There are as long as, last, lastly, in conclusion, and at last. The translator omit the word finally to make the readers understand the text more easily and to readers the likely explanation. Another example, Papua has the biggest gold mine in the world. The word mine has a number of meanings such as mine kepemilikan, mine ranjau, and mine tambang. The translator omit the word mine to make the readers understand the text more easily and to readers the lengthy explanation. The last one is translation by illustration. This strategy can be useful when the target equivalent item does not cover some aspect of the search item and the equivalent item refers to a physical entity which can be illustrated, particularly in order to avoid over-explanation and to be concise and to the point. For example, for your charities Miss Mayor, ini hasilnya Pak Wali Kota. In Indonesia, the word charities means amal, but in here charities is mean hasil. It is seen on the picture that the priest gives Beth Cayman some money and he gives the money quietly. So the translator illustrates the money with charity because usually someone gives charity to the church and then the church donates it to poor people. The translation wants to illustrate that Beth Cayman is a poor man and he deserves to get a charity from the church, even actually he is a rich man. Another example, I saw an office mouse steal money. Saya melihat koruptor mencuri uang. In Indonesian, the word office mouse means tikus kantor, but in here, office mouse is mean koruptor. Here our reference, and that's what we can present. We hope you all can get new information from our presentation. We apologize if we made a mistake in our presentation because we are also still in the process of learning. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.